Started.
Let's do it.
Record. Awesome. All right, JP, tell everyone what we're going to be talking about today.
All right, guys. So in today's training, we're going to be talking about the 5 core functions of how to run, operate, and improve how your business functions and get it to run like clockwork and essentially increase your profit by touching every element of the business.
Got it. Yeah, something to emphasize on. A lot of people, there's so many good what we call like marketer in the business world, but when it comes to scaling 7, 8, 9 figures, there's a whole different side of things that people don't put a lot of emphasis in.
Yeah.
It's like you can be a good marketer and you can make like 7-figure 1 year, but afterwards, like you just gotta learn the backbone of the business, the drivers, the screws that plug everything together in order to keep it sustainable, right?
Exactly.
So I think kind of like learning that from you and then what we implemented can be very helpful for a lot of people watching, because a lot of you guys are business owners, and just following this mental framework and then the framework of the business, knowing, hey, what decision to make in different components of it is going to amplify or help you solve future decisions. And it also helps you prioritize certain stuff that you wouldn't think it's, too important, but at the same time, by having this rating system in place, it definitely helps out, a lot of different components, right?
Yeah, 1000%. So essentially, with the model that we're about to teach you guys on, we're going to fix a couple of things. Number one, you're going to go from winging it in the business to actually learning how to operate it. It's going to be a lot more predictable in your decision making, like Felix was saying. It's also going to allow you to solve problems in your business in a much more sustainable way as well. Because typically, and we've been through this together, when we try to solve problems in the business, we see all the problems and we try to tackle them all at once.
Yeah.
But by doing that, we actually create more complexity in the business. So we're going to eliminate the complexity and just get you to be really focused on optimizing different parts of the business.
Cool.
Yeah, let's do it. Cool. So where should I start? Should we just go through the model one by one and then talk about scoring and all that, right?
Yeah, so I think this is what we call like a scoring system.
Yep.
Like, kind of like what you labeled it, right?
Yep.
Do you have like a name for it?
I don't have a name for it. They're just called the 5 core functions of the business. So we're going to talk about what they are individually and then how to score them. And then how do we go and improve those? So we'll just kind of like how I mapped it out with you earlier.
Yeah.
We'll just do the exact same thing for them.
Okay.
Right? So first things first is there's 5 core functions of the business. Number 1 is lead generation, right? It's how do you generate leads for the business. Number 2 is lead nurturing. It's like how do you nurture those leads so that you can go into number 3, which is conversion. Because if you don't nurture your leads, they're not going to convert well. Number 4 is then delivery, like delivering your promise to your market, rather it's a product, program, or a service, whatever that may look like. And then the 5th one is retention, making sure you keep your revenue and then how to retain more revenue from your already existing clients without having to be stuck in the rat race of always getting more clients through acquisition, right? So let's break it down. So we have lead gen, okay, and then lead nurture.
Forget.
I know.
Let me write it for you, bro.
Just write it, man. Yeah, my handwriting's terrible, guys.
I got you, bro.
Here you go. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna focus on lead generation.
Much better.
This is where you get the clients into the door, the process and the flows, and then the different channels, and then we have lead nurturing.
Yep.
Okay, and then we have what we call conversions. And then what's next?
Delivery.
Delivery.
Yep.
And then we have
Retention.
right?
Yep.
Okay. I guess before we get started, I know we kind of like broke this down into different departments.
Yeah.
So, right, lead generation, lead nurturing always falls under the marketing department, right?
Yep. So I'm right-handed. That's why my marketing. Then we did sales here, right? So technically, both of these lanes, lead nurturing and conversion, even though lead nurturing is technically part of marketing, it still plays a role in the sales process. It's not just sales and conversions. You have to do follow-ups, right? So when you're doing follow-up with leads, that's not necessarily only on the sales side. That's part of like the marketing effort to build those relationships, cultivate that trust with leads so that they can then convert later. So these 2 lanes will fall under sales. And then essentially here under delivery by itself, this is your fulfillment. And I would say a bulk of your operations too. Right? And then the retention, this is more around cash flow, and then retaining your revenue, so keeping a low refund rate, and then increasing client experience. Yeah. Because if you can't improve the client experience inside of your entire model here, then you can't really have additional revenue coming in, or people just won't pay you more money, they won't stay on as clients. So you have to constantly innovate to some extent in order to work with the same clients again and again and again. That way you don't have to go and keep acquiring more customers all the time. So it kind of balances the scale of new client acquisition and just retaining people. And when you really dial in the retention side of the business, that's actually where a lot of scale is unlocked, because then it's all profit at this point, which can then be reinvested over here. And then that's how you have your business working like clockwork from a financial standpoint.
So just to add to that, I think this component is so important to scale from like 7 to 8 figures. Because a lot of businesses or services that we see, they're more like one-off model. It's just like, hey, you acquire all these clients, and then you fulfill them for 1 month, and then you have nothing else to kind of like help them with, right? So they're not repeat customers in a sense. They're not MRR model, and then now you have to go back to focusing so much of your energy and time on lead generation, and then it's just like a rat race. Like
it's a rat race.
It's a rat race.
Exactly.
You're going back and forth, and then there's no sustainability and predictability on the clients, and higher profits coming into the last component of that, right? The journey.
And essentially when you fix every single one of these lanes, that's where predictable revenue comes in, just like you said. Because I think a big problem that most businesses have is what's called the revenue roller coaster, right? The good months, the bad months, the good months, the bad months, and then they think that the only way to fix that is by strictly investing in more lead generation, right? In the form of like more ad spend, right? Or more paid marketing, whatever that looks like for different businesses. And they just go all in on that, and they burn through so much money when they could have simply fixed this over here and then reinvest those profits into that without costing them their core like sets of revenue essentially, right? So it's like core revenue comes in through this, and then retention revenue kicks in. You're no longer playing, it's like if you think about casinos, right? House money, right? So when you get more revenue on the back end of the business, that's technically house money at that point. So you're no longer playing with like the money you came in with, you're playing with house money. Therefore, you're not really like losing money technically.
Right.
You just have a new source of money that's there available to you, and now you're investing with that instead of your operational cash flow, if you will. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. So cool. So now that you guys have some context as to the different pillars, it's important to just give you guys some examples as to like what actually happens in each of these, right? So lead generation is basically how are you acquiring customers, right? So there's paid, right? So Facebook ads, YouTube ads, TikTok ads, Instagram ads, all paid ads, right? Then you have organic, and then you have partnership and referrals. So essentially that's how you're generating leads. Here you go. And then pretty much what you want to do is you want to dial in one lead generation acquisition system at a time. Because if you're not in a place where you're consistently generating revenue from one source, if you diversify too early on and you haven't quite figured out the one source yet, you're going to be spreading yourself thin. You're going to be spending a lot of your time in different areas of marketing when you should just be doubling down on fixing one source first, having that work for you, and then you go and expand on the different sources of lead generation. That's something that's worked really, really well for both Felix and I, and we did this with paid media. We've also done this with organic outbound outreach, depending on what kind of business model you have. So that's how you want to approach it.
Okay.
All right. So then we have, are we good to jump into lead nurturing, or is there anything you want me to add on this that maybe I skipped over?
Maybe it's the like the KPIs and how do you quantify this in
Yeah.
terms of turning this into a score, right?
Yeah. So pretty much for each of these core functions, you want to give them a score of 1 to 5. So how do you even determine what to score the core function? So what did I mention to you earlier? Because every business is different, so this is going to look different, but we'll give you some KPIs that can work for most businesses. So we have,
So I guess starting from the top is
Yeah.
just like what is your marketing cost or your budget for the month, and then in that how much does that translate into
Yeah.
paid opt-ins or free opt-ins or
Yeah.
free referrals coming in,
booked
partnerships,
calls,
and
all
then
that.
book calls, and then
Yeah.
number of clients.
So let's break it down to them exactly what we did here. So there's two things you want to look at for the lead gen, and I'm going to switch sides to
Okay,
my
yeah.
right hand. So you want to look at what is your lead flow looking like, and then what's the second thing on there?
Lead channel and sources.
Yeah. So like I said earlier, the different acquisition channels that you have. So number one is lead flow, and then acquisition sources. Okay. So, is your lead flow good or bad? That's a very easy thing to answer. It's not as complicated as it sounds. Are you getting enough leads on a monthly basis that should be resulting in revenue? Yes or no? Or you're like, my business is starving. I have like no leads, right? So you just want to say, okay, my lead flow is pretty decent. We're just like not converting or something's not going right on the sales part of the model, right? So you want to look at lead flow, and then acquisition sources is, okay, is the acquisition source we have performing or is it not? If it is performing, can we expand to a different acquisition source? Or if it's not performing, how do we fix it, right? So that's what you want to look here. And when we talk about lead flow, it's simply like, again, number of leads. So that's the first KPI you want to focus on. So number of leads. And an acquisition source is just channels. So for example, it could be Facebook paid, IG paid, okay, YouTube, or it could be like organic sources such as referrals or partnerships, which they can go hand in hand to some extent, right? So let's give you guys an example of some random business, and let's say that from a lead generation perspective, they're only running paid ads, and they're only running Facebook paid ads, and they have a good lead, right? Like they're having enough of an ad spend, let's say $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month, so they naturally get hundreds of leads every single month. To me, that's not really a lead generation problem. I would score them between 3 and 5. If it's like 100 to 200 leads, let's just put it at a 3, because really good lead flow where it's like several hundreds of leads a month, that's going to be more of like a 4 or a 5. So for the sake of the example that we'll use throughout the entire demonstration, we'll just go with 3, right? So it's not great, but it's not bad, but it's at least consistent enough to work with the rest of the model. Cool. Then we go into lead nurturing. So if we're getting hundreds of leads, how are we nurturing them? Like, are we messaging them? Are they getting emails from us? Are we, having our sales team reach out to them to do follow-up calls or just to build a relationship with those leads to better understand, like, what do they need, right? So essentially, I'm going to use the same example that we did earlier. What did we do this? We did a 2 for lead nurturing.
Yeah, for lead nurturing 2.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's say they're scored at a 2, and then let's also talk about what things you want to look at when scoring lead nurture. So the things we want to look at is number of conversations, okay, number of outbound calls, and then what else do we have?
Touch points, and then number of emails, and then the quality of the number of emails comes down to the open rates,
Yeah.
because that shows the engagement of that lead doing the nurturing process,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So keep in mind the KPIs are different, but
Yeah.
very similar to a lot of like different businesses. This is mainly applicable for like online
Yeah.
businesses. right?
Yep.
Um,
If you're doing any sort of like online marketing, online fulfillment, or just most of your business is doing online, these are going to be really helpful for you. But if you really think about it, even if you don't have an online business, a lot of these things should be done in any business model.
mhm.
But yes, like ideally, like this is more tailored to online business models. Doesn't matter what kind of online business it is, this is all applicable. So then number of conversations and number of outbound calls. Even though outbound calls can be seen as a sales generating activity, it's also a relationship and nurturing activity as well. So, you know, I would, instead of putting it under conversions, I would just put that under lead nurturing, and it's a hybrid activity between marketing and sales that typically salespeople can do, not really a marketing team member. So this is some of the stuff that you would look at. And then from a score perspective, the way we fix this is, again, just improving the touch points with your leads, just going out of your way to have conversations with them to understand what their pain points are and what solution are they looking for. Because if they're here, they must have opted into your ecosystem somewhere in your marketing, right? And if they haven't yet booked the sales call and if they're not converting, it's important to understand why not. And if they say, hey, the solution you have in the sales process isn't good enough for me where I'm at right now, that's why they're not converting. But if you focus on improving this, you're building a relationship to the point where they might not be the right client today, but it doesn't mean they can't be a right client in the future. So this is why this is incredibly important.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So something I just thought of is like, this is also in contingent to like lead magnets, right? Like how
Yep.
many times someone downloaded something that's free resources, what's the watch hours of like your free content, that's all building like what authority and dividends in the brand and also leading up to conversion, which is sales. Because by the time that they, you know, watch all of your free content, that's basically your best salesperson. They're doing all of the sales work for you and making sure you understand the product, the process and whatnot, the belief system
Yeah,
before actually speaking with someone.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And the most common pitfall that most businesses make, and this is not applicable to just online businesses, just business in general, is when someone comes into your lead pipeline and they don't convert, most of the time businesses make the pitfall of not building that relationship any further. They let the lead drop off. And the longer that lead drops off for, the less likely they'll ever become the ideal client for you. So you have to take this seriously. And by focusing on this, you naturally increase conversions because you've been building trust, you've been checking in, you've been building either a direct relationship with the client through your sales team, doing follow-up calls, not like to sell them, but just to check in with them, or through email, so you're always top of mind for them. So if you don't have email campaigns going out, if you don't have text messages going out to them to some extent, if they're not being retargeted from ads, if they're not hearing from anyone in your company, then you're going to be having a low score in this area. So that leads us to the next part of the 5 core functions. So the third core function is conversions. What score did we use for the scenario example?
3.
3, okay. So this is a 3. Again, 3s are not great. They're not necessarily amazing or good, but they're also not bad. So it's a very neutral place to be. If you have a 3, most likely you're having some sort of consistency with conversion, but it's just like, again, it could always be better. And what you want to do is you want to be better. You never want to allow it to go under a 3 because then you have a really big problem on your hands, right? So for some things to look at when it comes to conversion, we talked about, was it number of calls, right?
Yeah. So number of calls.
Yeah. Number of calls. And these are sales calls.
Yeah. And then there's also a byproduct of that, like quality calls too, like the quality of the audience that are booking these calls.
So we'll call it qualified calls,
Okay.
or SQL, right?
Yes.
Sales qualified calls, or leads.
Mm-hmm.
So number of SQL. And I think it's important to just touch on this a little bit because now we're going into some terminology. So you have MQL. Well, actually you have UMQL, unqualified marketing lead, right? Essentially, someone that's not supposed to be in your audience is in your audience and they're not qualified to do anything with you, basically. So that's an unqualified marketing qualified lead. Then you have MQL, marketing qualified lead. That means it's someone who's interested in your marketing. They are most likely qualified to work with you at some point with something. And then they make their way to an SQL, which is a sales qualified lead. So that's what that is. You can have a bunch of calls, but if you're not tracking the quality of those calls, whether it's unqualified leads or qualified leads, then this KPI by itself is kind of irrelevant, and it's really hard to justify what you need to improve or even identify areas of improvements in your sales process.
If the ratio is off for unqualified more than like qualified, it's more like a marketing problem, like
Exactly.
the front end, the avatar that you're calling out, right?
Yep. So we have number of calls, number of SQLs, and then was it applications or what else? So number of applications and the number of opt-ins. Is that next?
I think the product, which is the checkout rate conversion. So let's just say it's a low ticket product.
So checkout conversion percentage. So we can talk on this a little bit right now. So even for us, like we're in the coaching, consulting space and service provider space. If you're in e-commerce and you have any sort of like a checkout page, whatever kind of business you have, this is an obvious one, right? So if your conversion is low, most likely you have a problem either in lead nurturing or even between lead generation and lead nurturing, because lead generation is the first type of messaging that people get from whatever it is that you're selling. Then, so if you fall short here, you bring in the wrong people, and then you fall short here, naturally people aren't converting for two reasons. You didn't do a good enough job building any sort of relationship with them, or two, what they read on an ad or however it is you do your marketing isn't consistent with what they saw here or what they saw on a sales call, whatever it is for you, right? So that inconsistency is reflected based on their experience here, but it's going to show up here. It's not going to show up in some of these KPIs necessarily. So that's how you identify those things. And then what else did we have? I think we had like one more thing for conversions.
I think that's all I have on my part.
Okay, cool. So that makes sense. So when it comes to the KPIs, some of these are already KPIs.
Or maybe even like cash collected or units.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, was it the, not just number of calls, but the closing ratio, the closing rate, right? So what your closing rate is also a key performance indicator for how you should score this. So if your closing rate and if you do sales calls is low, then naturally you're going to have a low conversion score as well. So that's it for really that core function. Then we go over to delivery. So with delivery, you have fulfillment, the fulfillment of your product, service, program, again, whatever it is you're selling. And it's also where a lot of the operations go into your business, because now you have customer support, you have client success managers, you have a lot of things that happen on the back end of the business as compared to the front end of the business, right? So how this is all set up is super critical to how you're going to score this core function. So some examples of delivery, what do we have written down for the example?
Time to value.
Oh yeah, so TTV, time to value.
And your NPS score.
Your NPS.
Success rate, which can be quantified by the timeline to get someone the results.
Yeah.
And then I guess number of like reviews or testimonials in that case.
Yeah. So let's talk about all of these really quick. So time to value is from the moment that someone pays you, when do they receive that initial set of value after paying you, right? So for us, let's just say for the sake of OPM as an example, our time to value is, okay, someone comes on as a client and they get their onboarding call pretty much like as soon as possible, right? And then from there, they get a game plan as to what the rest of the experience is going to look like, what's going to happen from their end as a client, what do they need to do, but what do we need to do as a team? That's time to initial value. It's not so much time to outcome, it's just when do they start getting value in your product, service, program, whatever that looks like, right? Then your NPS score is Net Promoter Score. This is a tool that can be used through Jotform, right? Survey tools, SurveyMonkey, Typeform, and things like that. This is a score of like 1 to 10 that gets sent out to anyone that's already been a paying customer or a client. And it just says, hey, like, how likely are you to recommend us to your friends or peers or whatever? And there's other questions you can ask as well. If this score is doing good, then your score overall for your delivery should be higher as well, right? Then the success rate, again, this is different for different business models, but how successful was your offer in getting the client slash customer the end result that they were paying for? So the way you can track this, if you have a program, a service, an agency, or whatever the case, is how many clients are graduating on a consistent basis versus how many clients are graduating at a slower pace, right? So are they graduating, like if it's a 90-day program, did they achieve the outcome and properly graduate within that 90-day period? Or did something kind of not go right in the process and now their success rate is being delayed to, let's say, instead of 90 days, maybe 2 weeks after the 90 days or 1 month after the 90 days, then that's how you want to be able to track that. Yeah. And then from a number of reviews, this is super important. This is called reputation management. And the reason why it's under the delivery is because obviously your delivery is rated through reviews as well, right? Reviews are slightly different from your NPS score. NPS score, again, it's like customer satisfaction. Are they happy? Would they recommend you? Review is like, hey, like give me an honest review about the service that was provided to you or the experience that you went through in working with us. So the more reviews you get, that means the more time people are willing to invest in giving you their time to give you some feedback. If you put out an email blast to your customer base or client base, whatever, and you're not getting a lot of people leaving you reviews like at all, let alone bad reviews, but if they're not even engaging, then that's a sign that there wasn't enough relationship building done in the customer experience. So they're like, oh, well, I'm done. I'm out to go do whatever I want now. So you want to be able to build relationships with customers and clients throughout this entire thing so that you can get a good review. And this increases your reputation. And if they're that invested in giving you a review to begin with, especially if it's good, that leads us to the next core function, which is retention. So if they worked with you once and if they paid you once, they most likely will pay you again if they're that engaged throughout this entire process. So before we go into retention, the other aspect of it for delivery is just fulfillment model. There are different fulfillment models for different businesses. So we have a service-based business, right? So a lot of our deliveries, like how can we improve how we deliver the service at an efficient way that creates impact, that creates results, and that creates outcomes. If you are doing e-commerce, that's going to be looking like, how can we get our product shipped out to people and in their hands in X amount of time, things like that. So just think about delivery more consistently with how you're fulfilling, again, your product, service, whatever it is that you're selling.
Yeah. I want to use another example, like a mobile car wash. If I were to operate a mobile car wash, the way that I would kind of like judge the quality of my service afterwards is just like, depending on the tips that you get from a client, because if a client obviously give you more tips, it means you did a great enough job. If they already schedule another time with you for like next week or next month, it means they want to be a repeat customer, or if they send any sort of referrals, right?
Yeah.
That can be all judgment or like key performance indicators on like a car wash example, mobile, a brick and mortar example. But obviously every business is different and you set your own KPIs on what is something that can be judged the success of the results that you got for the client, right?
Yep. And then what was the score we gave on that example?
That was a 3.
A 3, okay. So also not great, but not terrible, right? It's not considered bad. And then so again for retention, there's a couple things here. Number one is retention of revenue. So when we talk about retention of revenue, that's even split up into subcategories. Number one is your refund rate. How many refunds are you having to give? Are you retaining most of the revenue that's coming in and you're not needing to give refunds? That's where we should all work towards, being at, right? The other side of retention is how many customers or clients are going to become repeat buyers after the first thing that they buy. So those are retention offers. It's like, okay, you graduated this program, right? Well, we have a higher level program to solve a different set of problems that you now have after working through the first program, right? So it's like, okay, cool. You can upgrade to this package or upgrade to this program for this amount of money, right? Also, something we're going to be teaching like later down the line is how to not just do, retention through fixed pricing, like flat fees, but also through monthly recurring revenue. So if you have any element of your business that can be done through monthly recurring revenue, this is the perfect place to integrate that into, right? So what do we have on there in terms of like what to look for?
Yeah, so refund rate, upsells in terms of units or cash collected, and then monthly recurring revenue.
Yep. Yeah, so those are the key things you want to look at. We just kind of ran through them. So your refund rate percentage on the monthly basis is how many clients did we get in the last 30 days? How many of them were refunded? That's how you get your percentage. So if you got, I don't have good math on my brain right now, but if you had 20 new clients in a month and 2 of them were refunded, that's like a 2% or 20%.
10%.
10%?
So,
Yeah.
so 20 new clients, 2
There you go.
clients refunded 10%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's pretty high.
Yeah, that's pretty high. So usually the rule of thumb is this is why you want to really invest in customer experience and building world-class products and services is you want to have a refund rate ideally at scale under 5%. If you're not at point of scale in your business, that number needs to be lower because you're doing lower volume. So 5% is if you're consistently bringing in new customers, consistently bringing in new clients, consistently bringing in more revenue. If you're doing low volume, then really that number should look like under 3%. That's kind of where you want to be at in those ranges. And then upsells and upgrades, again, it's like, hey, can you solve a new set of problems for your customers? Do they need something else that you have within your ecosystem? Again, MRR is just recurring revenue, so it could be a subscription of some sort to maintain them and they get extra bonuses and benefits, or you're servicing them for, again, a different set of problems. So that's what we have there. And then what score did we have for retention?
2.
2, okay. Awesome. So let's look at the scoring. So for lead generation, we have a 3, so not bad, not good. Lead nurturing is a 2, that's pretty much bad. Conversion is a 3, delivery is a 3, retention is a 2. So in the scenario that Felix and I mapped out together, the reason why retention is a 2 is for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's not a refund problem in the scenario we created. It's that we aren't having enough conversations with people in the delivery phase when they graduate the program. Meaning, we're not having conversations on how to expand the relationship between us and clients. So it's like, hey, congratulations, you finished our program. Do you want to go into this or do you want to go into that? We're launching this new program, or we're going to be working with clients to solve this new problem, and we wanted to know if you wanted to be part of it, right? We're just not having enough conversations from that sense. So, we can fix retention by doing those activities in the delivery core function of the business, right? Another thing too is monthly recurring revenue. Monthly recurring revenue is a great way to add predictable revenue on the back end of your business. Currently, in the scenario we mapped out, that doesn't exist. There's no way of doing that. So if we do a really good job on delivery, and can solve other people's problems for a monthly fee of some sort, then again, that would actually increase our delivery, but also increase the retention core function as well, right? So that's how we would tackle that. And the thing about the core functions too is you want to always solve things going from left to right. So in this example, because we were fixing a problem that entailed these 2 things, notice how I actually worked on this side first, which would then lead to the increase on this side. So I did technically work left to right. Now, if we were to go to the sales side of things, you can see that lead nurturing is a 2 and conversions is a 3. So how do we fix that? I'm not going to go find some science to fix conversion just here. I'm going to move left to lead nurturing because this is where the lowest score is, and I'm going to fix that. So by fixing lead nurturing naturally, and it only makes sense, it would naturally fix conversion. So what does that look like? Okay, conversions, we're getting sales calls, but people aren't buying, right? We have checkout pages, people are interested, but they're not completing the purchase. Is it a marketing thing? Is it a pricing thing? Are we not communicating our promise or our deliverables in a way that convinces people or excites them to work with us, right? So, and then this is also a thing about follow-ups. Are we not converting enough because maybe our sales reps aren't following up with leads, and so we're losing opportunity there? All of those things can happen in the conversion phase. So how do we fix those things? Okay, cool. Once they become leads, are we having conversations with them to begin with, right? Are we saying, hey, saw you booked the call, what are you looking for, right? That's one example. Or it's like, hey, we solved this problem, would you be interested? It looks like you opted in, but you didn't book a call. Just want to see where your head's at, right? Those are conversations. Another thing too, is let's say in the lead generation process, someone just books a call, meaning they're skipping the lead nurturing and they're just on the calendar with our sales rep. Another way to increase conversion is for the sales rep to be proactive in the lead nurturing side of things and give them a quick 5-10 minute call and say, hey, Joe, right? I'm super excited to get on the call with you in like 2 days. My name is so and so from OPM. I just wanted to see like what is it that you're looking for, just so I can prepare for the call, right? Just that extra layer of proactivity helps in the nurturing cycle of working with leads and potential customers, right? Then we have emails too. If, again, every business is different. If you have a sales call that's coming up, there should be some sort of acknowledgement through email or text saying, hey, congratulations, we just want to confirm that you booked your call with one of our consultants at OPM Mastery. We're super excited to dive into what it is that you need for your business, whether it's capital, whether it's business consulting, business services, whatever the case is, right? That comes in the form of an email. So if I book a call with someone and I get that email within like 5 to 10 minutes, I'm like, oh damn, like they're really on top of it. And then let's say the next day comes by and my call isn't until the day after. Then the next day I go like, hey, really quick, I know our call is 24 hours from now. I just wanted to send you this quick link with some resources, and then feel free to check it out and I'll talk more about it on the call. Now it's like you're really trying to build that relationship. You're not spamming anybody. We don't want to spam anyone, but you are just being very proactive, either in the form of a sales rep or through marketing efforts in the form of email and text, things like that, right? So if you do a really good job of fixing this through some of these activities that we talked about earlier, right? Triage calls, check-in calls, free resources, some email campaigns, right? And you fix the score, what do you think is naturally going to happen here? This is also going to go up. So from a 2, this should really turn into at least a 4. You don't want to get it to a 3. All your efforts should really get it to a 4 or a 5. So when you do this, naturally your conversion is also going to go up to about a 4 and a 5. Realistically, probably not a 5, but if you can get it to a 4, then mission accomplished. That's exactly what you want to do. And let's say you're just really focused on getting your scores to a 5, then you just keep doubling down and doing initiatives and activities that continue to push both of these numbers even higher. And then you just, at that point, if someone has a 5 in lead nurturing and conversion, you're getting great customers coming in and they're just onboarding like crazy, right? So that's how you pretty much fix that. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, so I think ultimately when it comes to like, I know a lot of people would say, hey, what should I prioritize based on in terms of, obviously we already scored or gave a score, and then we want to focus on the lowest scores when it comes to optimizing, and it can be a byproduct of helping other scores and the different components. But I think it really comes down to like delivery, right?
Yeah.
Because the way that I look at it is like, if you provide excellent customer service, excellent product, the quality of the product, great experience, and they're getting great results, it increases all of these scores automatically for you. Like people want to refer people to you, that decrease your CPA, your cost per acquisition. It goes back to lead generation, right? Because now you get more funds or more referrals coming in. It builds dividend on that. And also nurture people right off the bat because they're speaking good on behalf of you, and that convert into conversion as well, right?
I totally agree with you. I think like one thing for you guys watching to understand is there's a lot of things on the internet out there that just focus on marketing and sales. The way, basically these 3 core functions, and it makes sense because you have to generate some sort of leads. Here's the thing: if you're at a point where you're just trying to get consistent and you're just trying to like get people results because you're so early on, you don't have a lot of testimonials, or your reputation or authority isn't necessarily up there yet, right? That becomes very challenging. So what you need to focus on, and Felix and I have actually built multiple businesses that focus on customer experience and on delivery, and we leverage the results we got in the delivery side as testimonials, right? Results, screenshots, whatever. And then what we did is, because we focused so much on this, we're able to leverage all of that into this, which is how like OPM, for example, is a standout funding company in the industry that we serve, because people are like, oh, like they have a really dialed in process on their fulfillment. Like they know how to service their clients A to Z. So there's never really a question about what we do or how we do in the lead gen cycle, in the lead nurturing cycle. And typically on the conversion cycle, it's mostly like, okay, seems like you guys are the real deal. Like, let's just work out the minor details, right? So we don't have too much of a problem here, but because we led with this, it really benefited us here, here, and here, right?
Yeah.
And most people don't think like that. So it's really like a different, what can we say, methodology and mindset just around just the sales process in general, you know? Because I think like even in the startup world, people talk about like MVPs, right? Minimum viable products, which means they're actually not focusing on doing a good product initially. They're like, hey, let's slap something together and take it to market, but that can actually backfire as well. You know, so you just have to figure out what your priorities are. And back to what you were saying, like, oh, now that we scored it, how do we know what to prioritize in our business? Simply put, if you have a lot of things you want to do, this helps you simplify that list and really tell you where you should be focusing your time and effort, right? And your money as well. So, for example, out of all these things, really the biggest area of opportunity, obviously it's lead generation and retention. If you have one core offer that's proven to work in the market, this is where you should focus on. So because you're having relationships that are dying in your pipeline and they need attention like ASAP, because then this increases this cash flow and things like that. There's no point in focusing on retention first when your main source of leads isn't totally optimized. So in this case, we're working left to right. This would be the first area of focus. And let's say you fix this in 30 days. Amazing. Then the next month, you focus on this. Amazing. And in the meantime, just in a 60 to 90 day period, you basically fix most of the core functions in your business and your business starts to perform a lot more optimally as well. So there you go.
Nice. In the right order.
In the right order.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it.
No, that's really good. So, all right. So JP, if people want to talk to you more about operations, frameworks, you know, just really building a lean, profitable business, how can they reach you and, you know, in school, for example?
Yeah. So the best way to do it, guys, is underneath this training, there's going to be an application form that I want you guys to fill out if you guys want to figure out this stuff for your business. Just because it's really important for me to understand what kind of business you have, what size is it, do you guys have teams, what operations do you have, what operations do you guys not have, right? And then after you fill out the application, you're going to be redirected to a calendar to book just a quick strategy session with me where we can jam on like, hey, what is your business need? Here are my insights. Here's a strategy for you to implement, right? And then that's basically it. Cool?
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else you want to add? Well, on top of that, we're probably going to do more training. I know JP is going to build out his YouTube content, so a lot more, maybe even diving deeper into each of these components to understand, you know, how to kind of like frame it or how to optimize it. I think that can be really applicable for a lot of you guys watching this, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we got you guys covered.
Nice. Cool. Good stuff, man.
All right, man. See you guys.
See you guys in the next one.